Hi YouTube, it's Catherine Michelle. This is going to be brief. Basically what this video is for is to extend an open invitation to the other group of people from Facebook, and you know who you are. I will be mentioning your names here in a minute. To an open dialogue to discuss the case. You guys want to call it a debate. We can call it a debate. That's fine. On the David Crowley case. And this will be the group who believes David to be guilty versus us, for lack of a better word, those of us who believe David Crowley to be innocent. The reason why this is coming out right about now, because we have asked multiple times, and various people from our group have approached people from their group because they leave comments like this. Let me get this for you. I'm not sure who made this initial post, but people from their group always send me things, all the time. But the last part, I should say, of their post before people started to comment was, I'll debate you anytime. Wake up, toy soldier. Look at the facts. And this particular post, I believe, is being directed toward Greg Fernandez Jr. And then underneath that on the comments, Joe Pierce writes, "It's interesting he keeps asking for proof David is guilty, but when someone steps up and says they will debate him, he runs like a scared little girl. This shows that his made-up fantasy holds no water, or he would jump at the chance to put us in our place." And there's more, but I don't have that. The person who sent this to me just sent this particular screenshot. They didn't expand the comments. Then underneath that, Joe Tomaso then responds to Joe Pierce, "You better watch out or he'll be producing a podcast about things from Mommy's basement again." And then Judy Prochnow responds to this initial post, "The impotent little rooster, all squawk, no talk." Oh my God, so mature. And then also Joe Tomaso then writes, "There's a method to his means. If he blocks you, you can't challenge him. And then he runs with you must be scared of him and his non-existent proof. Because you are blocked, you can't even respond." Okay, these people have been blocked from Greg because he has asked them. He's like, "Hey, you want to talk about this? Let's do it." And then it's snarky garbage like this. And after a while, and a lot of this stuff, I'm telling you, I have I have so much on each one of these people, the things they've said, what they put out there in the public, and yeah, I have a folder for each one of them. It's actually quite interesting, but that's not what this is about. But it's comments like this that really need to stop. So we're offering and we're extending an open invitation to you. We have found a time on a live conference call that will be aired live here on YouTube. The date is May 8th at 12 o'clock Pacific time. That should give you plenty of time to get your schedules together. Whatever your time zone is, figure it out when you can jump in. I will be putting the phone numbers in the description box below. But just in case, let me give that phone number here. The dial-in for U.S. Citizens is area code 609-663-0637. But there is also a link that you can click on. But again, I will be putting that information in the description box below. And we hope everyone will join us. You're all free to join in on the call, but understand that if any of them show up this time, because they have never shown up and they've always backed out, always, every single time. This time it's in public, guys. Now, if you back out, your little comments about Greg are just moot like every other time. This time it's going to be proof. Proof positive. Here you go. May 8th, 12 o'clock. And again, contact information will be below. And I will include this little snippet, this picture that they have. That's actually quite, it's just rude and so mature. But so you guys can see what we deal with and why these people are blocked from Greg. But let's discuss this case. Open debate, open dialogue. You tell us what it is and what your proof is that shows David slaughtered his family and then killed himself. And we will provide our proof showing that he was a victim of homicide, just like his wife and child. Until then, until May 8th, 12 o'clock p.m., hope you guys are all doing great, and we hope you join in. This live debate will be taking place on the Gray Stage YouTube channel, and I'll get that link and also put it in the description box. So any of you who want to jump in and watch this live on that channel, it would be great to have you. So see you then. Hopefully it's a good discussion.
Hello, everyone. This is Sophia from the Gray Stage podcast, and I'd like to invite all of our listeners to join the Justice for David Crowley and Family group located on Facebook, where we have almost 4,000 members. In this group, we welcome discussions regarding the case and have all of the documents located in the files section for everyone to review. If you like, you're welcome to visit Greg Fernandez Jr.'s website called The Gray Stage. It's located at thegraystagewordpress.com. You can find his book and all the official documents for this case at his website. Lastly, I'd like to introduce you to Catherine Michelle, who's a part of this podcast. Catherine Michelle has a YouTube channel under her name, where she mainly discusses the Crowley case. So please feel free to stop by and give her channel a like and a listen. Until our next podcast, keep seeking the truth and justice for David Crowley and his family.
You are live. Okay, it says I am live here. I don't know if I am or not, but we're supposed to be having a conversation with Judy Prochnow. She said her screen name on YouTube was Deep State Granny. And that was supposed to be right now. She said 12 o'clock her time, and it is 12 o'clock her time. I do not see her online as of yet, but this was supposed to be a discussion about the David Crowley case, and she was supposed to explain why she felt David is guilty. And again, it's just a carryover. I had invited them to a discussion with Greg and our group who believed David to be innocent on Saturday. They didn't show. Somebody said that they had logged in, but nobody, they dialed in probably. I don't know. I didn't see the statistics, but no one from the group logged in and had a discussion, even typed a question. And we were on air for 2.5 hours. We were live, I should say, for 2.5 hours. And it was a no-show. So I'm just sitting here waiting for Judy to show up. And again, it's so funny. If they do come online, it will be nice because I hope we can get past the, how do I put this? There are too many times where it feels like I'm dealing with a third grader. I mean, the woman is almost 70, and the old Catherine's a liar. I can prove her a liar. She's this, she's that. And, and I'm just like, wow, really? Okay. But anyway, it's like, just talk, be an adult and talk. So I'm still waiting for the adult conversation. Would be nice. But if you guys missed our live stream on Saturday on the Gray Stage YouTube channel, which is run by Greg Fernandez Jr., I did post that video, and you will find that in my video links. And it was a really good discussion. We did have a viewer who jumped online with us, and her name was Joanna. And she'd come in about halfway through the conversation, and she had some really interesting things to say. So if you haven't watched that video yet, I forget the title of it, something like, "Is David guilty?" Let me see if I can pull that up really fast. Give me a second here. It'll just take me a minute. Is David Crowley innocent or guilty? Full version. But definitely watch that, and especially when you get to that halfway point. It's 2.5 hours long. We went online and we waited, and it's a great video. It was a really good discussion. I learned a lot of things about how Apple Valley Police Department runs things, other cases that they've handled, fumbled, however you wish to look at that. But it was definitely interesting. As far as things that we're working on now with the case, I have so many different directions at the moment, but I have been doing a lot of background checks on everyone involved in this case, everyone that I can think of. And I found some pretty interesting things. The number one thing that I did find is that almost everybody is connected in one point or another, and has been connected either through work, through friends, through whatever, for a very, very long time. A lot of them have ties to the Freemasons. A lot of them, it's kind of almost like the Good Old Boys Club, if you guys are old enough to remember that. I've worked a lot of jobs where the good old boys, if you weren't a guy, you were just like 12th class citizen. And I'm so thankful that doesn't happen anymore. Not really, not to the degree it did before. Sorry, had to have coffee. Dutch Bros. Okay, this shout out to Dutch Bros. Love Dutch Bros. They're way better than the other place. Dutch Bros, yay. But yes, again, still waiting, and I wish I could share my screen. I don't know if I can do that. This is my first time live. If I could share my screen, I would show you guys that Deep State Granny is not live right now. She has not even come online. And if you want to, because they'll go and, oh, we have proof we did this and did that. You can go to YouTube right now, go to the Deep State Granny YouTube channel, and you will see she's not live. She's not even on. She's not on at all. And again, this just proves that they have nothing to back up their stance on this case at all. Nothing at all. And, other than the name calling, there's a term, I guess most people have heard of it, doxing. They dox people, and which is really, really immature. and it's like, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear about somebody's past that has nothing to do with the case, which is why there's things that I have found on other people that has nothing to do with the case. So I'm not going to bring it up. Why do that? It makes no sense. It's stupid. But if it relates to the case, absolutely, I will bring that out. And I don't consider that doxing. I consider that background research as to what possibly could have led them down the road that they went regarding the case. Anyway, it's like, don't tell me about somebody's personal life or what you think about their personal life, and then use that as an excuse to say, oh, see, they don't know what they're doing. No, give me something from the case, anything. If you truly in your heart believe David is guilty, come up and say, well, here, in the documents, in this report, here's where it is. And that's all I've ever asked for, but it's not in the documents. Instead, we know there is no bullet. They never found the bullet that killed David. So if he committed suicide after murdering his family, that bullet would have been in the house. It's not there. Where's his blood? Where's his brain matter? Where's Ranya's blood? And other things, again, because she's just a little baby. I don't want to go into too much detail about that. It's just not right. But someone said, Third Eye said hello. Hi, Third Eye. I know, Deep State Granny, that was her name. It cracks me up. But I'm still waiting for her to come live and She's not here. It doesn't surprise me, no. But to go back to the case, um, the evidence shows, again, no bullet for David. None. There's no bullet that has his tissue, his blood, his brain matter, his hair, nothing on it. There's one bullet, that fragment, or no, actually, I think it was a bullet itself that they found in the attic a month later by somebody else who was in the house, who wasn't supposed to be, who lied. It was Chris Klein who called the police and said, hey, we think you guys missed something. You missed a shot into the ceiling. And I'm sorry, I will argue with the police department on this until hell freezes over. If they walk in that house on February 17th and their first words are, it's an obvious defect in the ceiling. So if it's obvious on the 17th of February, why was it not obvious on the 17th, 18th, and 19th of January? Nobody else saw this hole. Nobody. And then a month later, Chris Klein finds it, calls the police. And this is the one that supposedly has David's DNA, but they don't say where this DNA comes from. But they specifically state no blood. The reports state that no blood found on the bullet. Now that cannot enter through his head, enter, exit, and have none of his bodily tissues on it. Just doesn't work that way. And then, so again, there's evidence that who killed him, where's that bullet? There's no blood of David in that house. Nothing tested belonged to anybody other than Kamel. Kamel's blood was the only blood that was found in that house. And still, not enough of it in any particular area. The blood stains, the blood spatter on the floor shows that there was movement. Whoever, in this blood that I'm talking about, in these spatter patterns, they didn't test, so we don't know whose blood it is, but we can guess or assume that maybe it belonged to Kamel. So whoever's blood is on this floor, they were moving. They were trying to get away, and at the process, they were bleeding. And again, they didn't follow that up. They just didn't do anything. And I know Joe Cooksley from BCA did write and ask and say, hey, do you guys want us to do, where they do the strings to match up trajectories for blood and try to find out where a person was standing, where the angle of the possible shooter or the attack was coming from. And the Apple Valley Police Department wrote back and said, no, we don't see a need for that. Really? Really? That to me is total incompetence. So we have no one's blood except for Kamel's, yet 4 gunshots that are proven by the autopsy into 3 bodies. Where's all the blood? Where's all the tissue? It's not there. So this is what we've been asking them, the other group who believes David to be guilty. We were saying, hey, where's the proof? Just give us proof. Show us your, something from the evidence. And I have yet to see anything. And if the police can't find it and the police don't write it, where are they getting their information from? I guess maybe that would be a good thing for them to tell us, that, hey, we know somebody who was there or has firsthand knowledge, but I want their proof as well. I don't want their opinion. I want them to back up that opinion with hard evidence. And the evidence is showing there's no way David was guilty. Exactly. Feeding it says they can't provide an evidence-based history. Absolutely true. So true. And they try to go back and say, speaking of the history, they try to say that David snapped, or he was kind of going off the deep end. He was, hiding and pulling away from everybody. Well, we're working on this. Sophia is wait until you see her research that she's doing on part of this evidence. But in the other stuff that we have been working together on, we're finding that the possible reasons why David and Kamel were pulling back was because what he probably found out about those in this inner circle, these Gray State guys, their past is not good. And you and I, normal people, would look at that and go, ooh, Oh, I just found that out about you. Okay, yeah, it was nice knowing you, but, and then you would back away. But then also, they were dealing with a lot of stuff where someone had hacked their phone, and this particular person, and I have done that, and I'm gonna, I don't know if this is called doxing, and I don't mean to dox it, but it's in the records, and anyone can go online and find this information. But someone by the name of Kimberly Leyland, I found her phone number attached to David's phone, his cell phone, and his text messages, where calls that would come in or calls that would go out would be routed through Kimberly's phone. And when I did my research on this, I find that Kimberly has a long history with this phone number, because some people were saying or asking, was this phone number possibly, a number that was used by AT&T, to route through so people want to check their messages? No, this phone number is associated with Kimberly Leyland. I could find all the way back to 2008. And there are multiple complaints online about people where Kimberly has hacked their phones, made phone calls, read their text, deleted their text, intervened, and then answered text on behalf of these people. So is that why David just stopped using his phone? Because he found out about this Kimberly person? We don't now, we'll never know. But when you start to look at the history and you see, they'll say, oh, David was pulling back. Well, yeah, who of us would not stop using our phone if we found out that it had been hacked and someone had been accessing our information, our texts, our calls, our, everything? All of us would say, yeah, I'm not using this phone anymore. So there's explanations for everything, legitimate explanations for everything that the Gray State guys, if you want to call it, and that's Danny August Mason, Mason Hendricks, Sean Wright, even Dan Crowley Jr., all of these people who try to make David out to be this crazy nutty guy, everything they've said, there is legitimate reasons for why David did what he did. And then they try to say, too, that he probably was flipped out on either weed or mushrooms or something. And I can't remember which one, if it was Danny August Mason or if it was Sean Wright who was throwing that little tidbit out there. But the toxicology report came back, and his system was clean. Kamel's system was clean. They had nothing. Camille had something like a pain reliever, kind of like ibuprofen, but that was the only thing found in their system. No alcohol, no drugs, no weed, nothing. So that theory's tossed out. So what caused him to supposedly snap? Detective, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Klonokos, or anyway, I don't know. Yes, and Third Eye Guy says weed doesn't affect you like that. That's true, it doesn't. I've known a lot of people who smoke weed, and not one of them did I see flip out. And then Detective, like I said, Klonokos, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he's the one who did all of the research on the devices found in David's, in the Crowley home, wasn't just David's. So he checked every computer, every laptop, every phone, and they found nothing to give motive for David to supposedly snap and kill his family. So, that tells me he didn't do it. There's nothing to back up this history. And with and then, the Gray State guys try to say PTSD. You don't just develop PTSD one day and then all of a sudden you snap one day and now you have PTSD and you're going to kill everybody. PTSD it's a history. There's a whole long line of behavior that has to be seen and documented. Somebody's going to see this odd, crazy, erratic behavior or depression associated with people. And David didn't have any of that. In fact, most people would say he was a great guy. And not to say he's perfect. All of us have good days and bad days. We all get angry. We're all happy. So it's not like he was this walking angel, but he was an average, everyday guy. So again, that theory blown out the water, not backed up by any of the evidence. So, again, where is the evidence? Just show me something. That's all I'm asking Judy Prochnow and the others, Louise Gibson, Judy Prochnow, Joseph Tomaso or Joe Tomaso, Joe Pierce, Joseph Pierce. These are the main people who like to go online in that attacking mode. And we're just saying, where is the proof. Not to say they can't have an opinion and believe David to be guilty, which is fine. They're allowed. We're allowed to believe he's innocent. They're allowed to believe he's guilty. But if you're going to tell me I'm crazy or I'm nuts, then explain to me why and what your evidence is. And then Third Eye Guy says the project itself is motive for someone to murder him, I think. And I'm sorry, it's like dealing with, I'm around a dog and I'm normally not around dogs. So it's like, I know it's gross, sorry. But yeah, where the project too. I've read both scripts. Well, actually there are several versions of the script. The one of supposedly from 2013 that was recently put online, but then taken down shortly after that. But I got that and I read that. And then I read his 2014. It was a later script that he did. And the later one was the one that he took to the mics in Hollywood. And that was a script that the mics from Hollywood, the producer said, hey, we want to do this. We want to do this in a series. And they were getting ready to sign a multi-contract deal for $30 million. That was the deal on the table. And David said, yeah, great. And they were waiting. And this all happened just before David was killed. So he didn't get the chance to actually sign the contract because they were negotiating it and then getting ready to send it to him. But then he was murdered. But there is and was a deal, was a deal for $30 million to do a multi-series of Gray State on TV. But the 2016 script, or I'm sorry, not 2016. Oh my goodness, he was gone for them. But the later script is not completely, but way different from the original script. When I read the one from earlier, it was very choppy. The cadence wasn't right. It sounded like there were 2 or 3 different writers, because different people have a different way of writing. And as you're reading this, I'm like going, okay, this is David's writing. And then it's like, okay, I don't know who this is, because it didn't flow correctly. It's kind of like if we were all in a room, someone said, we're going to write a story about a dog running down the street. And then each one of us wrote a paragraph. And then at the end, you would be able to tell it wasn't written by one person. It was written by multiple. And that's kind of how that one script felt, by multiple people. And it wasn't a very good script. I mean, I didn't like it at all. But then the later one, I wasn't a fan of actually David's script either, but I saw with the trailer, I saw where he would take it. So what he wrote wasn't necessarily what was going to be on the final screen, but you got an idea of where he would take his basic thoughts and then where it would end up. David shone when he put it on film. His written word is one thing, but when he actually started producing something, night and day. It's like I could watch his stuff on screen, forever. He had a really good talent in that area. But again, and at that point, for me, this is my assumption and my opinion, and I think this is where Danny August Mason lost his stuff, because what David had written, the one that he actually presented, which was his work, had nothing to do with anybody else. It was his work, his words. And again, different from the first one. So he didn't have to give anybody any credit for it because it clearly was his. So from there, I think that's where Danny August Mason kind of lost his stuff, because he was really out of the realm. He not only was not part of the new script, but he wasn't going to be part of the TV movie either. They're like, no, we've got someone else slotted to do these parts. We have someone else in mind to do these parts. So Danny August Mason was going to be out completely. And so there's motive for him. And again, I'm not saying he did it. I'm saying there's his motive. David has no motive. Danny August Mason has motive. Now let's go to Sean Wright, who was also part of this Gray State team. Now, Sean Wright went on Facebook and publicly stated, hey, dude, if you put out the Rise, I think it was the Rise, if you put that out there, I'm going to go to prison for my tax problems. So now he's looking at a 76-year prison term for tax evasion, and he's livid because he's blaming David for that. And David writes back and says, "No, man, you're not, nothing to do with you, and nothing to do with that is even in this. Don't worry." And Sean's like, "You need to call me because I don't want to go to prison." Okay, there's Sean Wright's motive. Again, I'm not saying these people did it, but if we're looking at terms of motive, David had none, police could find none. We now have motive for Danny August Mason, we have motive for Sean Wright. Now, Dan Jr., and that's his brother. Again, not saying he did it, but did he have motive? Yes. There was a huge rift between Danny Jr. and David. And David had said, he had cut off ties with him. We don't know what happened. And if it's a personal family thing, don't need to know. In my opinion, we don't need to know. But there's a motive. So now we have 3 people, 3 different strong motives, and a man who ends up dead with no motive, and he's being blamed by all of them. So to me, that's questionable. I'm like going, interesting. So, and again, I just want, I wish I could share the screen. But again, if you go to Deep State Granny on YouTube, you can find out she's not live. She said she would be live today, 12 o'clock her time, 12 o'clock Central, which is 11 o'clock Mountain Time, which is where I am. And so I've been live now for 21 minutes and she hasn't shown. So I'm going to assume she's not going to show today. None of them are there. Nobody. But yeah, so as far as the case goes, I'm going to wrap this up really quick because I could be sitting here waiting all day and she's not going to show. But I want all you guys to know that, still on it, but we are researching some really interesting things that we are finding. We're finding on Tom Lydon, which is the news reporter out there, things we're finding on the Apple Valley Police Department as a whole and their connection to Freemasonry. Danny August Mason, who became a Freemason publicly right after David's death. We have things that are going on with text messages, phone messages. The Kimberly Layton, who I think I know it's Kimberly. I'm sorry, I just lost her name, but who had been hacking a lot of people's phones, and she also hacked David's. Now, I'm trying to find out if there's a connection between her and any of the guys, or was it just a pure coincidence that David was just one of the numbers she hacked, and she was then, intervening and interceding his texts and his phone calls. Because looking at the data records for his phone, he cut off communications on his phone, stopped using it in early November. And by December, early December, nothing. There was no use of a cell phone at all, way before the deaths even occurred. So that tells me maybe David found out someone had hacked his phone. So he's like, great. And then he had to wait till he could afford to get, again, my assumption on that part, purely assumption, he had to wait and to try to get either a new number or a new phone, probably. I don't know. But that is interesting. So we're working on a lot of stuff. It's just taking a while to get all of the research done. And we also have now part of our group helping us do some of this research is a retired police officer and bounty hunter. His name is Stephen Sanziri. And he has been invaluable in helping us how to do things and how to do the research in a legal sense, so that when we do present all of this stuff again, it will be done in the right and proper way. So hopefully the police will pay attention. Doubt it though, because it's interesting to see that how many of these police officers are Freemasons, how many of them belong to a lodge right there in Apple Valley and in Minneapolis. And these guys were the ones, David, we know in his movie, he was exposing Freemasonry. So again, there are all of these ties into people who could have been responsible. And maybe that's why they turned a blind eye. Maybe they're just like, you know what? We don't care. We didn't like you anyway. You were Simon. Again, assumption, my opinion. but it makes sense because they did nothing. They did nothing. They say they research stuff, and we're finding things on people that they supposedly interviewed, and we're doing research and backing that up, backtracking what they're saying that they did. We can find no proof that that actually took place, other than the fact that they wrote it on a report. So lots and lots of interesting things coming up. So thank you guys. Thanks for being patient, and thanks for listening to me just prattle on and probably not say much of anything, but we're working on it, and please be patient and look forward to more videos coming. And in the process and in the meantime, I tried to join Greg Fernandez Jr.'s podcast. He does it like once a month. So if I'm not here, I will post that podcast on my channel here as well. But you can also go and listen to a lot of stuff that Greg Fernandez Jr. has been posting on his is called the Gray Stage. The Gray Stage on YouTube. Great channel, lots of really good content, and hopefully we're getting close. We're a lot closer than I ever thought we would be, but we're going to get there. So hope you guys have a great day. Thank you everyone for joining, and we'll talk to you later, and hopefully I can figure out how to turn this off. Have a great day. I don't know how to turn this off.
Hey, what's up everybody? This is Ross from Planet X Filmworks channel on YouTube and the Zodiac Files True Crime series. Check it out, and shout out to Greg and the Gray Stage channel. Their content is amazing.
Are you interested in the paranormal? Murder mysteries, cryptocurrency, and thought-provoking interviews? Then check out Crypt Rick's I've Been Thinking on YouTube, or every Monday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Studio A at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Welcome to the Crypt.
Record. Okay. Hi, YouTube. It's been a while, but here we are, and I have with me today Crypt Rick. There are several reasons why I wanted to interview Rick today, and that's because he has taken the time to go and speak with a veterinarian and ask that vet some questions about dog behavior around cadavers. And also, if we have time, he's mentioned a few times in some of his other videos and interviews that, he could see how David could not be guilty, and then he could see how David could be guilty. So I would like to kind of touch on some of those, on how he both actually, his view on what could lean him one way or the other, because I think that's really important. I think a lot of people feel the same way. They'll hear something or read something in the case, not quite understand it, and they go back and forth. I mean, if you don't know, what are you going to think? It's like, hey, so I get that. So welcome, Rick. And why don't you let everybody know how you went about this, what made you call the vet, and we'll take it from there.
As you said, I've been reading. Everybody told me at the beginning of this that I should read all the documents myself and don't listen to any one person or a group of people. Read it all yourself and go. And I did. I took that upon myself. I didn't realize how much there was to read. There's a lot of information to go through. Yeah. So I did everything. I read the scripts. I've read the journals. I've read all of the other police reports, looked at all the many photos, and then I guess it's because I'm an animal lover. I don't know. I honed in on the dog, and I also, probably because a lot of people are blaming this dog for everything, basically. And a lot of what they're saying happened to the bodies and happened to the crime scene was because of the dog. So I thought it's logic, right? Like, let's go talk to a vet. I want to talk to a vet who
Mhm.
knows about animals. And I do know a vet in my area that I'm friends with. And I thought he would be the perfect guy to ask. And he's been a vet now for almost 60 years. He's an older gentleman, worked as a farm. He worked, like, started off as a vet for farms and taking care of like farm animals like horses and whatnot. And then now he's practicing. He's been practicing for years, taking care of cats and dogs and all that kind of stuff. So I went in and spoke to him, and well, I set up the meeting, which was kind of funny story in its own, because I didn't want to tell him too much about the case, because I just wanted the aspect of what a dog the size of Paleo could do. So I didn't want to show him crime scene photos. I didn't want to throw a big stack of papers down and stuff like that. I wasn't looking at that aspect of the case. I just wanted to hone in on what a dog can do and what he thinks. And let me just reference by saying that this is only his opinion. I'm just telling you guys what he told me. So take it for what it's worth. I mean, I'm listening to an expert that knows animals and what they can do. So it gives me a bit of weight to me anyways. He definitely knows a lot more about a dog than I do and what they can do. So I went in and I set up a meeting with him, and I just told him I gave him a little bit about the case. Like some, like, there was body parts missing, and I explained which body parts, like the heads, heads were eaten. There was an arm missing. There was 3 hands missing, all of that kind of stuff. And that's where we kind of set the interview. That's where I kind of took the interview off at, was basically I just told them the very detail, like what was wrong with the bodies, and kind of like what was going on around the immediate crime scene with the dog food, and that there was dry dog food there. I said there was a full bag of dry dog food and there was a half-eaten bag of dry dog food. But there was no signs of scratching, or the dog was trying to tear at it or tear it over. So that's kind of where my interview with him started. And that's where it started.
Well, I'm really glad you did that, because as far as I know, no one in our group has actually taken that step yet. I know when I interviewed the coroner, or a medical examiner, I'm sorry, they're different. A medical examiner is actually a doctor. But when I was talking to them, he was making the comment and showed a photo of what a dog could do and had done to a particular body. And however, what I noticed in the photograph he showed me is the skull was completely intact. Yeah, other bones were missing, but that skull was completely intact. So that was my comment, and he didn't quite like that. And all I was doing was saying, but the head's still there.
Right. Right.
And so what did this particular vet tell you about your questions, or how did he answer your questions?
Well, yeah, I kind of got them. You gotta be a little patient because I got it written on my phone here. I'm not as good as you taking notes yet, but I'm getting there. But yeah, I've listened to this interview, and it was only about a 20-minute interview, because he was nice enough. He didn't charge me for the interview or anything like that. He just he said, make an appointment and then come on in. We'll have a coffee and you can ask me what you want. So I started, as I said, when I was just answering it a minute ago, I started off to start like asking him questions, because I wanted to ask him about the dog food. That's the part that I've always wondered about. I'm like, there's a full bag of dog food there, and there's a half bag of dog food. And I also asked him about the water, because there was, from what I can tell, and I could be wrong, I didn't see a water dish anywhere for the dog. So I said to the vet, he basically had 2 toilets that we know of that had water in them, from what I can tell. And if I'm ever wrong, correct me, Catherine, by all means.
No, there was upstairs, not the downstairs. However,
Right.
From what I remember reading in the police reports, the downstairs toilet was closed. The lid
Right,
was closed.
right.
Upstairs was open. So you
Right.
really only had access to one.
To one bowl, right? And I remember saying that to the vet. I was like, he only had basically access to a very limited amount of water, and unless a dog can flush the toilet, I mean, they blame him for everything else, so maybe he can do that too.
Right.
But like, yeah. So I said, like, he only had that limited amount of water, from what we can tell. He only had like basically a toilet bowl full of water. And then I was asking about the dry food, and at first, I thought I kind of caught him in a moment, because I said, is that weird that a dog would start eating like eating their owner if they have dry dog food? And that the very first thing he said was, yeah, that's kind of weird. And I was like, so we're getting somewhere. But then we started talking a little bit more, And I explained to him how there was gunshots to the head. I said there was definitely, like I said, there was lots of gunshots to the head. I said, so there would, and then there would have been a lot of blood and tissue, which I get into with him later on in the interview with him. And then that's when he kind of clicked in and he was like, wait a minute, like, okay, there's gunshots to the head and there's a lot of blood. And he kind of like said, and it made sense what he said. He's like, you have to, like, I always look at this. I think people, when they look at what the dog did, they try to look at it from a human aspect.
Right.
And if you know what I mean, like
Mhm.
I wouldn't do that. But he's like, what he told me was you have to look at this as an animal aspect,
Right.
from a dog's aspect.
And it's not good or bad. It's just instinct.
Right. That's what he said. He's like, it's an animal. It's a wild
Right.
animal when you really boil it down. So he said, you have dry dog food, and he goes, you have tissue. He goes, you have fresh blood, a lot of blood. You got brain matter. You've got, scattered everywhere. They're full of blood. The bodies are full of blood. The dog is naturally going to go to that area. He said, that's like a boot, like that's a banquet, he said. And he was just being very honest. He's like, to a dog, that's like heaven. He's like, it's fresh meat. And he's
Yeah,
like,
that's what the coroner was saying. I mean, the medical
Right.
examiner said too. Yep.
Right. And he said and then I said that kind of does make sense when you start looking at it from the aspect of a dog. And I was like, okay, so you think, because I was like, remember saying to him, I'm like, is that weird that the dog ate that much of their owners? Like, he ate their heads and he apparently ate their hands. And there was and a lot of people go back and forth, but there was not a lot of blood at the crime scene itself, which I did ask him about further down. That's kind of like what I'm leading up to. But he does believe, if the dog was there, now this is what he said, if the dog was there for the 3 weeks, like they say, he believes the dog could do this damage that I told him about. He said he thinks the dog could do it if the dog was there 3 weeks. Now, if the dog was there less than 3 weeks, it's not so sure, because it depends. He has to have, you have to have the right amount of time to do this. He didn't do it all in like one day, but he said over the course of 3 weeks, a dog could definitely do this amount of damage, he thinks. And I said, well, what about the water? And he said a dog could definitely live on that much water for those 3 weeks, because you have to remember that if he's eating on these bodies, there's a lot of water in the flesh itself, in the blood and stuff like that. So he said it would be enough, he thinks, for the dog to survive and do that damage.
And see this, I would have loved to ask him this question, because this is something I've often wondered about, because blood actually dehydrates you.
Right.
And human blood is different from animal blood. So it would be more of a dehydration factor. So how would that have affected the dog's health? Did he say that at all?
No, he didn't actually, but I am going to write that down, and I will ask him, because he said I could always come back to him if I have any more questions or people have questions. He's more than willing to answer them. So I will write that down right now.
Because
Actually,
when I was talking to the medical examiner, I didn't even think about that, because I was just so new to the case. And basically all I wanted to talk to the medical examiner about was the autopsy reports, because the garbage that we put up with,
right.
Oh, you don't know what it's saying. Okay, medical terminology is a finger's a finger, a head's a head. You can't switch this stuff up. And
Exactly.
so I really wish that I had known more about the case when I did talk to the ME. But one thing and another thing, I would like, if he's willing to answer this question, because I don't think this is possible. Is it, to me, and you may be covering this here in a second, but it's the specifics, just the hands, just the face, nothing else. To me, I've never seen a dog pick that. Will they go for where the blood is? Yeah, across the board, everyone has said yes, that's without question. Yes. But then the other thing is the large portions of skull that are found. It's not just shards, it's large chunks. And that is not something a dog, when you're taking anatomy and physiology and you're messing with cadavers like we had to when I was taking the class, I don't think people understand how strong the skull is. And a dog, I can't see how the dog could pull off major chunks of skull. That to me really is more consistent with the multiple blunt force trauma that you see upon the skull pieces. So if he could address the size of skull pieces that should be found, if any are left, that would be a good
Okay.
thing too.
Definitely. I could definitely ask him. And I did kind of ask him, I did ask him half of that question. I did
Okay.
ask him about why the areas that the dog did attack, like I wouldn't say attack, but the dog did feed on. It sounds so gruesome when you talk about it,
It
but
is,
it's
but-
the truth, but where the dog fed on. And he thinks immediately he said, yes, definitely the head. What he thinks is that probably because of the gunshot wounds, the dog may have started licking at the blood, because he said the scent of that blood in that house would be so strong that it would just, his animal instincts would kick in, his dog instincts would kick in, and he would start licking at the blood. So he thinks he could have probably started licking at the head and then just kept licking like dogs do. And I've had dogs where if they start licking at something, they'll just keep going and going.
Yep.
So he probably started doing that and then just started feeding on the head, kind of because that's where the blood was concentrated on. And I asked him also about the hands. And I said, is that weird that he would eat the hands? And he said, what he said was, and I'm can only go by what he said, is that the dog was, there could have been blood on the hands, which would attract the dog to the hands, and that they're easy accessible. From what, and remember, he didn't see any of the crime scene photos. I was just told him the parts that got eaten. I didn't tell him that there was hands that were kind of under bodies in that, but he was saying the dog would go to areas that were exposed and would have blood on them. So that's the answer that he gave. But I didn't ask him about the size of like bone chunks and stuff, but I will ask him that for sure.
Okay. Yeah. And, and if you're looking at that, like he said, yeah, that would make sense if there is blood on a hand. However, the feet are completely, exposed, not touched. The one hand, his left hand, is completely exposed and not touched. So, yeah.
Those are good points. I know. Yeah. I never asked him that.
But he doesn't know, he's answering honestly and for what's exposed. And like you said, when Kamel's left hand is completely under her body and she's face down on the floor, so how does he get to this part of her face if it's on the floor?
Right.
And so that's kind of always been my question. And that's what I was asking the ME as well. I'm like, but she's face down. And, there's no evidence of the dog going, because he would have to dig his muzzle into there to get up.
Right.
And again, I know this is gross, but, I'm tired of the naysayers on this. You're face down, you're like this, and this dog's got to get in and eat up all of this portion that's on a floor, but yet leave all of this alone. So again, we're going back to what's accessible. What's easily accessible. Is the dog going to go for, there's, and from what I can tell on the writings and how they described finding the bodies, it did not seem like her head was contorted or where it would look like a dog had to go in and dig and kind of pull at. That didn't seem to be the case because her head is covered. It's covered with a blanket. So we've got her face missing while it's covered with a blanket. But see, he doesn't know that. And then with that left one arm up underneath her body, that's not accessible. Her right hand absolutely is accessible. So yeah, what he said would make sense. Did you ask about like the abdominal cavities? Would a dog go for that area?
Well, that's what I did ask him. And I kind of like touched on that. I was like, and he thinks it's because the body's like it wasn't accessible. Like that's what he kept going back to when I asked him. And I'm now that you're bringing up points like you are, I'm going to go back to him with this. And I know I'm really going to get him thinking now because it's not as easy explained once you start telling them that there's parts that are not easy accessible. There's a hand that's still there that the dog never did touch. So, but yeah, like I told him, I said, from what I could tell of the clothes photo, that it did look like the dog was scratching. Like to me, there's some rips in David's shirt, and it does look like the dog was kind of scratching at it to me.
On the back side of his shirt, though, and he's laying on his back.
I know. Well,
but that makes sense.
True.
What you're saying though about little Rania shirt, though.
Right.
Yes, that makes lots of sense. And in Kamel's pant leg.
Right. Yeah, that's what I told him. I said it looked like the dog was pawing at it, whether or not trying to wake them up or he thinks that he was probably pawing at the blood. Like I said, do you think he was trying to wake them up, like because they weren't moving and stuff? And he said, no, I think he was probably pawing at the blood and trying to get at what was causing the blood or whatever. So that's what he gave me on that. But I definitely gonna have to ask him those questions that you were just mentioning, because those are good questions, and it kind of changes the whole dynamic of that answer when you start saying that there's not all easy accessible.
But this is good, though. I really think that this is a good base and a good foundation, because from here we're going to build on from the basics of, is this normal animal behavior?
Right.
Well, now we all know, because I've heard it from several others too. Yes, this is normal animal behavior, because like you were saying at the beginning, so many people tend to think that their animals, oh, my animal would never. But yeah, they do. And
Right.
it doesn't mean that it's a bad animal. It's just what they do.
Right. And I said that to him too. I said, so you're telling me that if I die, my cats will eat me if they have
Oh,
no
yeah.
food? And he was like, oh yeah, they'll eat you. No problem.
And
he
cats
said,
are worse
"That's-
than dogs. Mhm.
Yep. That's what he said. He goes, that's just what they do. He said, it's nothing. It's not a personal thing. You're dealing with an animal with instincts. And the smell of blood is so strong to a dog, and I would imagine a cat as well, that they just, it's to them, he said, and he said it bluntly, he's like, to them, you're just a big piece of meat. You're like a
Yeah.
big steak. And I was like, it makes sense. It really does.
Yeah, because the moment that you start to decay, your body now sends off a different scent. And it's going to trigger that,
Yep.
wild aspect of who they are in their brain. And you can't hate them for it. You can't call them horrible names for it.
That's
That's
what they
like
do.
telling somebody who, yeah, but and yet it's so funny, because yet how many people will sit there and eat a really raw steak and think it's the best thing they had, and and then condemn a dog because it's going to eat a human body, when that's pretty much the same thing. It's human tartare, but don't people eat steak tartare?
Yep.
And
And that's what he said. Yeah. Like, and that's what he was saying. If your animal is hungry enough, you are just a food source. And then he
Yeah.
also gave the example. He said, don't forget that humans are no different than a dog when they're starving. He's like, remember people that have got into plane crashes and stuff like that. You hear about cases where they've had to feed on human bodies
Mhm.
to survive. If you're hungry enough, you're going to eat. If there's a meat source there, you're going to eat it. And whether it's a dog, a cat, a human, it's meat. That's what
And
he said.
that's-
It's meat.
That's true. I am a vegetarian now, vegetarian, vegan, depending on my day or my mood in that particular week. But I do not eat, I cannot bring myself to eat meat anymore. Part of that reason here is, though, because when we were younger, we lived on the Crow Indian Reservation for a few years. My mother happened to have married the drummer of the tribe. And there were so many times in the places that we were living, it was condemned housing, where half the time we didn't have running water, we didn't have electricity. And even in the winter, we didn't have a refrigerator. But thank goodness in Montana, you could put your meat out and your food outside on your porch, because it kept it cold. It was all snow and cold all winter long. But I particularly remember so many times we would be so hungry. And I would tell my mom, she would be in the room sleeping, right? I'd be like, Mom, I'm so hungry. I'm hungry. Can you go make us something? And she'd be like, well, there's kidney and heart in the refrigerator. Go get it. And I'm like, but we can't you won't let me turn on the stove. She's like, just go cut a piece off and eat it. I was so hungry. That's what I did. I ate the raw cow heart and I ate the raw cow kidney. But as a 12-year-old kid, when you're starving and you haven't been eating for days, you will. I don't care what anybody says, you will eat whatever the hell you find.
Right.
And so to this day, though, I don't begrudge anybody else who eats meat. Like I go out with my friends, and my one particular friend, she's a huge carnivore. And so I'm like, eat whatever you want, don't care, but don't think I'm not gonna touch it.
I'm not joining you. I don't blame you. Yeah. So yeah, that, and it made sense when he said that. Like it really did. Like when you start looking at a lot of this case from the aspect of a wild, like of a dog, it makes sense. Like, but then as you brought up, if there's parts that the dog can't get to, and when I bring that up to him, I'm really curious to what he's gonna say to that. Like how do you explain that? You can explain the head, you can explain a lot of the stuff, but why did he not eat certain parts that were exposed? Like there was another hand exposed, he didn't touch that. So, and I didn't want to, like, I really just didn't want to hit him with like, hit him with everything at once, like,
well, because
I just want to kind of warm him up.
Yeah, and that was the thing why a a lot of the stuff I did, I didn't know some of, well, actually the majority of these things, but B, other things I had kept from the medical examiner, because the amount of information is so intense. But because other people then went and contacted this ME and lied to him and told him that I was calling them a murderer online. I never called any of them a murderer, especially this particular person who has nothing to do with the freaking case, but
Right.
then tells this and sends this big sob story. And then the ME buys it hook, line, and sinker and is saying, oh yeah, well, she's seen this. And I'm like, what the hell? Because I felt the interview went really well. He was very honest. And I stated what he said. From what he read in the reports, he stated he felt that David had done it. And so but I did ask him, if I present with you information that shows he's innocent, would you change your mind? And he said, absolutely. But
Right.
at that point on that day, that's where he stood. And I'm like, cool. So I was going to come back for a second interview and then bring up this other information, especially when I found out that her head was covered with a blanket, her left hand was under her body. And then, like you just said, David's left hand is exposed. That is not touched, but parts that are covered are gone.
Right.
How is that possible? And I mean, without, so that to me says staging of a crime scene again, and then blaming this poor dog. Is there anything else that you guys covered?
Oh, I covered. Yeah, I asked him also about, because Greg was asking me to ask him, like Greg said, can you ask the vet what if a dog could eat that much bone, and would it hurt the dog's insides and is
Yeah.
and all of that? And I was like, I'll ask him. So I did, and he said, I said, like, can a dog eat that much bone in that amount of 3 weeks, and would it hurt the dog? And he said, absolutely not. He said dogs that they can chew that much bone, they'll break it up over time. And he said it won't hurt the insides. And I said, really? I kind of thought it would, but when you think about it, they do. Dogs eat bone, they chew it right down, and they swallow pieces of bone in that. Now, he did say that there would be bone in the feces if they would have tested. He said you would have definitely found bone in it, and they could have tested for DNA too. He said they have been able to do that for a while now. And I didn't ask him about that. He brought that up on his own.
Wow. Oh, wow. Okay. See, that tells me a lot right there.
Right.
So, my brain, and that's good to know that their intestines can digest it to a point. And that makes sense, because as you're saying that, I'm like thinking about when I was younger, we had dogs, and when I have friends who have dogs, what do? You go to the butcher and get the bones, right?
That's what he said.
Bones. And yeah, they eat those suckers. So
that's what he said. He goes, because he has a dog, because it's a vet, he has his dog there all the time. He said, I go to the butcher all the time. They got boxes of bones, different size bones that you can pick for your dog. And he said, I get the big bones, and he goes, my dog will chew it right down. Like, you'll give it a big bone, he said, and within like a week, it's nothing left. He just eats the whole bone. And I was surprised that a dog wouldn't get any damage from that. And he said, no, they're designed to do that. He said that's not going to hurt the dog at all. So I did ask that question for Greg.
Okay, good. And then now that hopefully will be settled and put to rest. But it is interesting, because what he said goes along, because when you were telling me that you had done this interview, I went and I did some more research and reading, and there was a site that I came across, and they stated the same thing that this vet said, is that you will find visible pieces of bone within the feces. Now, they might not be big, huge chunks, but you will see visible proof of bones within that feces. And then if you test it, you will find the DNA of,
right.
And so that to me is, then I'm like questioning really big time, because we see the feces, we see those photos, and I'm sorry, I don't see bone fragments in that dog feces.
Right.
So now I'm like,
it makes you wonder, right?
Why?
And I did also ask him, because a lot of people were saying that if he was eating off the bodies, that the dog would have like the runs, like diarrhea or whatever. Like, and I said to him, I said, is that, like I said, from the pictures I saw, it looks pretty much firm. I mean, it's not, definitely not the runs or explosive diarrhea everywhere. Right. And he said he kind of did the scale thing with his hands like this. He's like, that's up 50-50. He goes, some animals, if they would infect their feces at all, and he said some animals it would. And he said there's no right or wrong answer to that. He just kind of did the scale thing. And
okay.
I was like, okay. So, and he said, especially if the owners were ever feeding the dog meat, like scraps of meat or whatever, or he was getting meat from his dog food, like if they were giving him wet dog food, or he said if the dog was eating meat of some sort, he wouldn't have a big reaction if he started eating the meat off the owners.
Okay,
So I
see, that makes sense.
right. I thought he was going to say that it should be all running everywhere. That's where my brain went, because I've had animals where if you change their diet too quick, bad things happen. Like they really, it does havoc on their insides. But he
Yeah.
said with a dog, it's totally different than a cat, because I was going by cat aspect. And he said with a dog, it's kind of different. And if the dog's already been introduced to meat in his diet over the years, he's like I said, he went 50-50. He's like, there's no right or wrong to that. It could be, could not be.
Oh, okay, well, oh man, see, this is really helpful.
Yeah, I was
Believe it or
surprised
not,
by that. I
yeah.
thought I kind of would have got him with the runny poop. I was like, I got him on this one. And then he did the 50-50, and I was like, he got me again. So I'm trying.
No, it's like I think it's really helpful, and how I'm viewing this is like it's really now with everybody we have been talking to, in for some reason, even myself and most people in the group, we kind of have all speculated as to what we think should or should not have happened with this
Right.
dog. But now we have, like you said, it's a professional. He's been doing this how many years?
Oh, he's like 60 years or something like that. He's an
Okay.
older. He's almost retired.
Okay.
So he's been
see,
at it, and he said he's been a vet his whole life. So
he obviously knows what he's talking about.
right.
And now with what he's telling us, now we can put together, what Paleo could have done.
Mhm.
And that just falls within the realm of being a dog. And what we know he could not have done, like the covered heads. How is he going to get to the head if it's covered with a blanket?
Right.
No evidence of him being able to get to it. How did he get to the arm? We know he didn't do the Kamel's head and Kamel's left hand, but he very easily could have done the other hands. I still, did you ask him if that dog could pull an arm from a socket? I don't think
No,
so.
I didn't ask him that either. I should have. I thought of that when I was leaving. I was like, I forgot, but I will ask him. I'll set up another
Yeah.
interview, and I
Be-
will.
Yeah, because
I'm curious
that
too.
takes a lot of force I'm telling you, a lot in just the damage that was done to, her upper pec
Right.
area, and then a fractured rib underneath that. I just don't think that dog could do that.
Right.
But yet we do know, though, he could have then, if that arm was taken off by a human, that then the dog could have at that point consumed the arm and only left evidence within his feces
Right.
that they never tested, which is good to know.
It's good to know. That's what I thought. It doesn't matter what, like, at least we're getting answers, and we're getting it from a professional, which I think has a lot of weight to it. We're not speculating, and he's giving us his opinion and like what he knows as a vet. And I thought that's really cool. I was really happy that he even talked to me, because I kind of just went at him. He had no, like, I was trying to explain to him. I kind of said the dog was beside, because you can't really tell the size of the dog. I said it's kind of like the size of a cocker spaniel, maybe, to a black lab. I said, so somewhere I wanted to give it quite a bit of leeway for the size of the dog, just because, I figured I got to be fair. I don't want to say it's a small, tiny dog, and I don't want to say it's a huge dog. So I was like, kind of like lab, cocker spaniel, somewhere in that.
And to help you ask him the next time, I read somewhere, and I will see if I can find that information again, that Paleo, when he was found at the time and taken to the kennel, he weighed like 14 or 15 pounds.
Wow.
So, but that was not his normal weight. He'd actually lost weight.
Right.
So at the time that he was found, he was 15 pounds. So I would say 15 to 20 pounds maybe is what the dog normally weighs, which would be good. How much can a dog that size consume? And yeah.
What should its average weight be, right? If it was eating, like, you think it wouldn't have lost too much weight eating if he ate everything they say that he did, that's a pretty,
there you go. Ask that question.
Yeah, that's a lot of calories if you're eating all of that. Like,
yeah.
So I wonder, that's a lightweight for a dog that size, I would think.
Yes, the dog had actually lost weight. It was described as thin. The dog was thin, and we can see by photos that David had in his journal, Paleo was not a thin dog. He was actually quite a little chunk-a-munk,
right.
like a very healthy dog. And then to have him when he was found called thin. And then we do have a photo, and see a photo of Paleo sitting in there. with Dan Jr. and Dan's on the
Right.
outside of Hillary's inside, and he does look very thin compared to the photos from David's journal. So he had lost a lot of weight. So yeah, that would be a great question, asking the vet, would the dog then lose 5+ pounds consuming human flesh, which
Right.
could be possible because, like I said, human blood, which is different from cow's blood and pig's blood, animal blood, it does dehydrate. So which could have then made the dog, even though he could have been eating, he's now still going to become dehydrated. So
Right.
that'd be a great
That's
question.
that is a great question too. And then I also, what I was asking him too, because I tried to get him on another aha moment. I was trying to throw little stumps at him, like trying to like little roadblocks, and he answered them perfect. He just had no problem with them. And I was asking him, I said, like, from what I can tell of the crime scene photos, there's no bloody dog footprints anywhere. I said, if the dog's walking around and he's eating, I'll go with you on the journey that he's eating on these bodies and he's clawing at them, but he's going to get blood on his paws or around his lips, like in the fur of his mouth and stuff like that. And I said, you don't see any bloody paw prints anywhere. I said, at least I don't, and I don't see any on
No.
the couch. I don't see.
There's
And
none.
and he said that that's probably from the dog. He said, you got to remember 3 weeks that dogs lick a lot. And if he's going around, he's going to be licking at that blood. So he's going to be licking the blood. And I said, and that's why when I was leading up to, and I said earlier that I was telling him about there's not a ton of blood at the crime scene. And he did say that that's probably because for 3 weeks that dog was going around licking everything. And he'd be looking at if there's stuff on the ground like brain matter or anything like that, the dog would naturally go to that. And I said, so you think if there was bloody paw prints on the couch, he could lick the couch enough to get rid of those prints, like clean the couch? And he thought the dog could do that with that amount of time. He thought that the dog could clean his paws, and I'm just going people by what he told me, that the dog could clean his paws enough that there wouldn't be any blood if there was blood on his paws, and the same around his mouth. That it's possible that the dog could have been kind of like cleaning up all the blood around the crime scene. And if there was any like paw prints on the furniture, he might have licked that. But then now I have a question for him that I'm thinking about as I'm talking right now. If that's the case, and he was licking the paw prints up, why didn't he lick the blood up on the chair? That big pool of blood on the bottom.
And the blood, that the spatter that is on the floor. Now,
Right.
here's the thing. And again, and this is why I say, and I honestly believe he's going to change that opinion in this case because he doesn't know everything. He just is going by generalizations. And generally, yes, that is true. A dog will go and look it up. However, when they sprayed the areas with the amino black, which is a luminol type product, you don't see cleanup. And now it would still be picking up the tongue swipes on the floor of the cleaned up blood. You see none of that anywhere. There's
True.
There's no evidence of a dog licking up blood, but yet we see on the footprints where blood had been swiped underneath, that had been cleaned up. You don't see it to the naked eye, but when they spray it, it's picked up. That's the hemoglobin is still picked up. So you see where a swipe pattern there. So which is not the dog licking. It was cleaned up, new things put on top. I mean, it's layered, so you clearly see that. But again, if he were to see those crime scene photos or even get more of that puzzle, then I really honestly believe he'll be like, oh, wait a second, because there's that one section where, and I could be wrong because to me it looks like a bloody handprint on the floor because there's quite a bit of blood in one spot, but then some spatter. That dog would have gone around licking all of that up while it was fresh.
Right. Well, that's what I mean. You can't we can't have it both ways.
Right.
If you're going to say the dog was licking up all the blood around and cleaning up the crime scene, well, he's very selective is what I'm saying. Like he cleaned his paws, he cleaned his face, he cleaned up a lot of blood on the couch or wherever he was sleeping and there was blood everywhere. Like if his paws were tracking blood, but why not clean up what you were just talking about? Why not clean up the circle of blood on the lazy boy chair at the bottom of that? That's a big stain.
Yeah, well, he would have been chewing at that chair.
Right. Why so selective? That's a good point. And I'm going to have to give him the photos, I guess, because I think that's going to make it a lot more clear for him when he starts seeing a bit more of the evidence.
Yeah. And too, with those prints, when they were put down on that floor, regardless, we're not going with how they got there. However, those prints got on the floor, some believe they're actually foot. I did the comparison. I'm working on that video. It doesn't match up. And or did somebody put them there? Doesn't matter. It was still fresh blood at that time.
Mhm.
And yeah, the dog should have gone straight to those larger areas. And so therefore those wouldn't even have been there
Right.
anymore. They would have been like swiped and smudged and everything all over. So yeah.
That'd be a good thing to ask him. Yeah, I'm gonna definitely give him the crime scene photos. I'm gonna have to, well, I'll ask him. I shouldn't say I'm gonna give
Yes.
them to him. I'll ask him if he'll look at them when he has a moment, because I do think that I'm very curious how he's gonna explain that away. That, like, I mean, why would he be so selective, and why leave the hand behind? Why? Yeah. So those are good questions, and I'm hoping he will answer them. I'm hoping he will.
Yeah, and I think he will. I mean, but like you said, he's very knowledgeable and brought up some really good points. Was there anything else you guys talked about?
I asked him because I had heard in another interview that people were saying that the bodies should have, and I'm not sure where I heard this, but I do remember people talking about it, that the bodies didn't have like maggots on it. There was no
Right.
like flies around it and stuff like that. So I did let him know that this was winter in Minnesota, and that didn't shock him at all. Like, he's like, there wouldn't be any flies, there wouldn't be any maggots. He said they just don't appear. They have, maggots are coming from the laying of eggs.
Mhm.
Right. And he said, so that doesn't surprise me at all. He did say, like, there would, like what you guys have covered before, there would be bloating, there would be like all the things you described with a deep decomposing body. He said that's what you would see, but there would, I'm just saying, I wanted to answer that question because I know a few people were asking it, of like, they've said, well, they couldn't have been there 3 weeks because there was no maggots, there was no flies. That time of year, he said there wouldn't be any.
No, and even if there was a warm day or two, I'm from Minnesota, so I was born and lived a good portion of my life in Minneapolis. So I know Minnesota weather and I know Minnesota winters. But if there's a warm spot, could a fly then kind of patch somewhere? Sure. But this is in the middle of a cold spell in winter, snow on the ground, and flies, what, they only live maybe 24 hours. It's not, they don't live very long. So you would not expect to see any maggots or fly activity in that house at all.
And that's why I addressed it though with them, because I know, like I said to him, I said, I'm not even sure if you're going to know this. I just kind of threw it out at him because I do remember hearing people in the video kind of debating that and saying, like, why is there no flies? Why is there no maggots? That shows that the bodies weren't there or they were moved, blah, blah, blah. You know the story. So I was like, I'm just going to ask him. And then he jumped right on it. He's like, at that time of year, you're not going to have that type of stuff. He's like, there's no flies. It was normal to him.
Yeah,
But
if it had been summertime in the body,
Right.
been there a week, oh yeah, you would definitely find. If you didn't find any maggots, you would go, oh, okay, something's up here. But wintertime, yeah. So I mean, I don't know about you, but sometimes I just get so tired of repeating the same thing over and over. It's like, well, okay, I've said it once, either you listen or you won't, and we're gonna let it go. Time to move on.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, I mean, and that's why I was saying at the beginning, I can only go by what he's telling me.
Right.
And he definitely knows a lot more than I do about the character of an animal and what they can do to, like, I was shocked. When I first started looking into this case, I didn't even think it was possible that a dog would eat their owner. Like, that's how naive I was.
Oh, okay.
I was like, a dog wouldn't, my cat wouldn't eat me if I was dead and they were hungry. It's kind of shocking when you find out that, yeah, you're just a food source, if you want to break it down, to be honest. And I was kind of shocked about that.
Oh yeah, I've seen that stuff before. And
Right. I never did. So I think people think that their animals love them, and they do. But I mean, when they're hungry, you're just a big steak. So I was like,
exactly. And that's the thing. It's like you stated at the very beginning, I think you said that's what the vet was saying.
Right.
People tend to forget that once that blood gets in them and it triggers that portion of their brain, they're no longer that pet. They are now back to their wild instincts.
exactly. That's what
And
he said.
they can't stop it. It's just what happens. But again, does it mean that they're bad animals, and should they be, euthanized? No, if they can find a loving home, they can go back to, eating their dog food and not
Yeah.
going around trying to attack and kill you in your sleep, unless it's a
Right,
crazy
yeah.
dog.
Well,
That's got
exactly.
race.
But yeah, so yeah, it was really cool. I learned a lot from this interview with him. I really did, and it was interesting. And even though I tried to kind of throw a little stump, like I thought I'd get him on the bloody dog footprints for sure. I was like, well, there's no dog footprints. And then he jumped right on it. He was like, well, the dog's probably cleaning them up and cleaning his paws and washing his face. And I thought, well, it makes sense. But now that you bring up that there's other areas of the crime scene where there is blood and the dog didn't clean it up, he's getting selective. So it's good. It's a good thing to ask him. I'm going to be excited to set up another interview with him.
Yeah. And again, though, this is really excellent base information, and you have to get that base information
Right.
first before you can start building on that. And then, okay, I mean, because as any learning, you're going to learn the very basics of anything first before you start to switch up the scenarios. So yeah, it would be really great, because I have yet to see a dog be selective and pick and choose, and then can eat something under a body and then put a blanket over it. Let me eat your face, and then let me put a blanket over your head.
Right.
That just doesn't
And same with
happen.
David's hand. Why? Yeah, like why not eat the other hand of David? And I didn't even think of that when I was talking to him. And I'm sure you've had this when you interview people too. You always remember questions when you're done the interview. Then you're like, I didn't ask this. I didn't ask this. Why didn't I ask this? And it's just so frustrating. And I'm learning that the hard way. And I
Mhm.
remember thinking that when I left the interview with him, I'm like, why didn't I ask him about parts that were exposed that the dog didn't eat? So I'm glad that he said I could come back to him with some more questions, and he would take the time to answer me. I'm just hoping that he'll look at some of the photos and stuff like that, kind of give him a better idea of what we're dealing with and what's around the crime scene and stuff like that. I'd be really curious to see what he thinks.
Yeah, because I'm telling you, that crime scene tells a story.
It
And
does.
and it is showing a lot of violence and a lot of rage. It is an extremely violent crime scene.
Mhm.
It wasn't a simple coming in and gunshots and it's over. No, there's violence throughout that house. And things may not be moved, but there's absolute evidence of violence. So yeah, it's and again, so it's like, I do know that dogs will clean up, and what he said, that is true, but they're not going to be selective and let me clean up my paws while I ate here at their face. Now let me clean everything up and then leave everything else over here.
Right.
It just,
Right. And yeah, when you think about it like that, it's true. Like why would, and maybe and I'm not saying the dog wasn't selective, maybe he was, but to me it's kind of weird that he
yeah, when you
wouldn't have
start
cleaned
putting
up.
everything together,
Yeah. Yeah.
clean that
Like,
up.
I mean, and then I'm sure the vet might say that the reason that he didn't attack didn't eat David's other hand, maybe it didn't have blood on it or something. I mean, I'm guessing that's what he's going to say, because he was really big on that the parts that got eaten were covered with blood. That's kind of where he was going with. He's like, it was that, because I asked him about the hand. I said, there's hands missing. Why would he go for that? Because I always thought that animals would go, and maybe you know this better. I didn't even ask him this, but wouldn't animals go for the soft tissue more, like the stomach and the abdomen? And I'm just thinking, like when you die out in nature, the first thing that birds go for is your eyes and like soft areas. So why is it as simple as they were wearing clothes and that's why the dog didn't go to those soft areas?
Well,
Or I don't know.
the ones that I've seen before, and this could be a breed behavior as well. I've seen some situations where it didn't matter if they had clothes or not. They still went for the abdomen and got it.
Okay.
But yet what he said makes sense. If there's actually active bleeding and active tissue, they're going to go to that area first. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Right. Okay. I just yeah,
But
like it's a good
here's the
question.
thing. As soon as he said, when you were telling me that he said that, there on the video, on one of the pictures, you see where I think, to me, it looks like on David's left leg toward the upper part of the thigh and the hip area, where you see it looked like the dog was scratching at
Right.
his pants, ripped a hole, and there is visible skin where it looked like he clawed at that skin, and now you see muscle underneath or skin underneath, but yet he didn't eat that.
That's a good point.
So
Yeah, because I did mention
again,
that the dog was pawing at him. At least that what it looks like to me. But
Mhm.
that's true. Why wouldn't he, if he did make all the effort to go through and paw at him like he did, why wouldn't he start eating that area?
yeah,
That's
if he's going to choose a hand that doesn't have blood on it and then totally bypass active raw flesh, See, again, this is where things start to just not make sense. When you look at the entire picture, it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, that what one of the things he said makes absolute sense for one part of the scenario, but does not fit the whole scene. So when you
Right.
start pulling all these things together and getting all these aspects, and you have to look at it as a whole, it's an entire puzzle.
Right.
And so that's when you have to start to question, go, okay, we don't see bone fragments in the feces. Not all of the blood is licked up. There's no evidence of licked up blood on the floor when they sprayed the amino black. There's, choosing pieces of body to eat, large portions of skull that doesn't happen when a dog is gnawing away at a bone, which is more indicative of blunt force trauma where you're breaking off large sections of skull. So yeah.
It's interesting. It really was. I really enjoyed talking to him. And it's always like that when you do an interview. I wish I could have talked to him more, but you could hear like people coming in and stuff. So, but I will definitely set up another interview. I'm going to jot down all the questions that we were talking about tonight, and just to get his. I really do want to hear what he says. I think it'll be really interesting.
Oh yeah, I mean, and yeah, I'm so grateful you did. I love to learn new things, especially from
Me too.
a perspective of someone who knows what they're talking about.
Well, yeah.
I don't, yes, I can speculate. My brain can run off into some wild fantasies, but at the same time, I don't want to it's okay to talk about that and do some brainstorming. But when it's coming down to, okay, let's settle in with what we think really happened, I don't want to mess with that, because it's a fantasy, I guess. But now we have some good solid bases to take off from and start building the picture to the scenario. So I'm really grateful for that. And if you don't mind, if I can jump subjects here for just a second.
You can go anywhere you want.
I would really like to touch on especially your views, your particular views, like what leans you toward, I've heard you talk about why you think David could not have done this. Now, what has led you to where you could think, well, maybe he did? So if you
well, I'm being very honest when I tell people I'm bouncing back and forth. It's the truth. And I find that it's almost daily as I'm going through the evidence. Like 1 minute, I'm like, he did it. And then another minute, I'm like, he couldn't have done it. And then you'll read some more evidence. And then you're like, no, I think he did it. And then you're going back to, no, he didn't do it. And what I've told everybody what I think, why I think he did, like why I think let me try to word this right. Like I have my reasons why I think that he did not do this, because a lot of the evidence to me from what I've read in the reports and I've looked at all the photos, I just can't see him doing this. And it's just because of a lot of the questions, like the bullet in the ceiling, the bullet in the floor, stuff like that. And when you start adding it up, it just leans me to he couldn't have done this. It just doesn't make sense. And it doesn't add up when you start looking at it.
It's physically impossible. Yeah.
Right. And I will tell you why I think he could have done it. I mean, I will get there, but, and then as I was telling other people, I spoke to a gunsmith who that's what they do for a living. They work with firearms and they know bullets. They know what bullets can do. They know, what guns can do. Like they just know. And I remember when I was telling him about the bullet in the ceiling, and the first thing he said, he was like, well, there must have been tons of blood on the ceiling. And I said, no, there wasn't any blood on the ceiling. And he's like, that doesn't make, like, the first thing he did was like, that doesn't make any sense. He's like, what he told me, if those gunshots went to the areas of the body that they said in the head and all that, he said that place should be covered, like painted with blood. He's like, you don't not realize the damage that hollow point bullets do. Yep. When they're exiting the body. He's like, yes, they make a small little hole when they're going in, but he said the damage is when that's coming out. And he showed me pictures of bullets of a hollow point, what they look like when they hit hard objects. And he said, so did they find any blood on the tissue in the ceiling, like when they found it in the attic? And I said, no, they had nothing. They had DNA on it. I said, but there was no blood, there was no tissue embedded in the lead, there was no hair. And he's like, that's almost impossible, he said, for that to happen with that type of bullet. And so that's another reason that makes me think that there's something weird going on, not to mention the fact that they found it a month later. And I know a lot of people kind of shrug that off, but to me, that's a huge deal.
Yes.
That they find it a month later, and then they found the one that rolled out of the carpet before that, right? And I'm like, okay, I can understand you missing one, but how are you missing more?
Well, and this is the thing, and this is something that, I learned by going on to a particular crime scene with the coroner, and it happened to have been a shooting. And it's same thing with them. I mean, they were there for hours. I mean, this coroner was there for hours and hours and hours, going through the scene, taking photos, checking the body, which did not happen in David's case. Coroner and the ME came in, they just said, okay, bag him up and leave. No, this coroner went through and really looked at everything and made everybody leave the scene until they were finished. But even after they finished, as we're driving back, we got there early in the morning. We didn't get back to the office until the sun was already down. So, I mean, when I say hours, they were there hours. Wow. And they're, as we're driving back, they're like, oh shit. And I'm like, what? They're like, no, I'm sorry. It was when we were back at the office and they got the photos. Okay. They're looking through the photos because they got them developed right away. And they're like, oh shit. And I'm like, what? And they're like, look at this. I didn't see this entrance wound at the scene on the body, but yes, saw it in the photos. So I asked them, I'm like, well, is that common? And they're like, yeah, you can't always find all of the bullet fragments. You just can't. Sometimes you just have to wait. So the fact that the cleaning crew found that fragment, which turned out to be Ranya's the next day, that came when they were rolling up the rug and then it fell on the floor. To me, that makes perfect sense. I don't see anything weird or odd about that. It totally fits a crime scene like this. So I don't condemn them for missing that, because we don't know where, did it roll under the couch? It could have. We don't know. And even the cleaning crew doesn't know where on that rug that fragment was. They only know as they're rolling it up, it comes
that's true.
So it could have been anywhere. It could have easily rolled underneath the couch and they would not have found it.
Right. So that one can be explained away, but the one in the ceiling, and then also the one that was shot in the floor, I find suspect too. And I know a lot of people say, well, he was shooting at the dog. And I'm like, okay, well, you don't know that. Like, I mean, that's a good explanation for it, but you don't know that. Like, there's no way of knowing that he shot it at the dog. So to me, that's another thing that it's just another question or another.
Well, and not only that, David was an excellent shot.
Right.
I'm sure he was a marksman or whatever the highest level of. I mean, he went out shooting all the time. The guy knew how to handle a gun, and I think he would know how to shoot a dog.
Right.
But
and even if the dog ran away, like some people say, why would he just chase the dog down and
well, and you don't even have to do that. You don't have to do that. When you have a moving target, you lead them. So as you're aiming and someone's running, and if you don't follow them, you lead. And as soon as you see them heading, you're going to shoot where you think they're going to be. So by the time you shoot it, boom, you get them. So that's what he would do. He wouldn't be shooting at a dog as it's running around the house. That makes no sense. Right. None whatsoever. But okay,
no, so that was that's the things that really got me. Well, there's a lot of other ones, but we'd be here and a lot of people already know, know them. Like, I mean, we're, like I said, you get tired of kind of rehashing it. Now, I can also see him maybe possibly doing this because, and I kind of changed my mind when I started reading the journal in a lot of ways. And, because he does clearly state in the journal that he thought that he had PTSD and that he was treating it like this is how I took the journal. I could be totally wrong. I always tell people that this is what I see and it's not set in stone. Like, I mean, this is just what I think. And so for whatever it's worth, but to me, it's not out of the question that he could have had PTSD that was undiagnosed and that he was going through some stuff. I know you're shaking your head. I know this is what I know.
Okay. But yes, you're right. You're right. This is your thoughts and you have every right to feel
right.
So go ahead. Yes.
And I'm totally open to being wrong. Trust me. I am open to this. But I'm just saying, I can see him, like, I'm more leaning toward that he didn't do this the more I look at it, to be honest. I really am. I'm trying to be in the middle, but I mean, I could see somebody like him, because he does, at least from what I've read, and like when I read in the journals, and I think that's probably why he was playing around with marijuana a bit. I think that's why he was playing around with mushrooms a bit. I'm not saying he was doing mass amounts of them or anything, but I do think that he was treating something early. He thought he was treating something that he might have had, and the drinking, I don't put a lot of merit in. Like it's not like I saw cases of beer all over the house, or
Yeah.
I think he was kind of like, yeah, I drink, I don't drink anymore, but I used to, and sometimes you drink. But that's the only thing that ever led me kind of to believe that he could have done it, because I mean, maybe he did. It's possible that he, like,
Well, and
the problem I have, let me just say,
okay.
the problem I have with the journal is you're looking at snapshots, and I write a journal too. And I mean, you're writing a section that is for that moment, and but it doesn't define your whole like day or anything like that. So I hope I'm wording this right.
No,
I
you
know,
are very well.
like, yeah, like 1 minute I can write my journal, oh, I'm having a horrible time and my cat broke something, and that cat is annoying me, and I wish my cat would just leave me alone. It doesn't mean I don't want my cat or anything like that. 10 minutes later, I'm playing with my cat, we're having a great time. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying, like, that's another thing that's making me always bounce back and forth. Yeah, he did say some harsh things about his daughter in the journal. You can read it. He did. It's just there. It's the facts. And I do honestly believe, and I know people can say I'm could be wrong, but I do think he was struggling with something, and that's up for speculation. It could have been, him being a father, him being trouble with his daughter, because you kind of read that he's kind of up and down in this journal with, like, having trouble with his daughter and adjusting to being a father. And I do think that remember he was in two, like, he was in a war. That's the way I look at it. So I mean, to think he has maybe PTSD that's undiagnosed is not a stretch for me. And then could he snap? It's possible, Catherine. It's possible.
Well, and I could see, I do see how you feel that way, and that's where your understanding lies. But I spent over 10 years working with military guys
Right.
alone in their hospitals and in their clinics, their little that they have on the post when they just need to have a checkup, but they don't need the hospital. They would go to the
Right.
clinic instead of the ER. I did this for 10 years. I've watched these soldiers. I've seen PTSD. And I mean, was David affected? It would be naive and I think almost criminal to say he was not affected by the war. That would
Right.
just be sheer stupidity. Yes, he was affected. However, he was not affected to the degree that is implied by so many. When reading the journal, and when he talks about that, especially the one section where you're talking about where he's like going, where he felt like he didn't say the words PTSD, but he was,
Right.
by what happened. He was referring to, and he states it as plain as day, about when he was lost.
That's true. That really upset him.
That
right.
is what caused him, and the PTSD that, or whatever instance he was speaking about and speaking to then, was the fact that they were able to do that to him, and they could still do that to him to that day, because it's the military, and once you're in, you're never really out. And so that is where his fear came in. It had nothing to do with having flashbacks, and never had anything to do with, violent tendencies. I mean, there's violent tendencies in so many of his people that were around him, but he never had a history of violent tendencies.
Right. And that's another thing that would make me flop too. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I kind of, as I read the journal, I kept going back and forth. And like, see, I don't, like, about stuff like that. I'm not a doctor. I've never been around. I know a couple of people that are in military, but they're currently active in the military. And I don't know anybody that has PTSD or they're suffering from it or anything. Like, I've met a couple of people online, but I don't know them personally. So I don't know the signs in that. Are you like, and I can ask you that, is it is it common that people just with that PT just snap one day, or is there a lead up to it? Like, there would be, like, I have to believe there would be some signs of this before he just
no.
snap.
And even in the psychology field, there's no snapped. It does not exist. That's some term that came along somewhere and people picked it up and ran with it. It does not happen.
Okay.
There is always going to be something that shows in behavior that leads up to it. And a lot of times with soldiers, what is referred to as PTSD today was back in the Vietnam era called shell shock. And trust me, when these guys start to have these flashbacks, they are violent and they are scary as hell. There was one time when I was living in Minneapolis, and the downstairs neighbor was a Vietnam vet, and he had lost both of his legs from the knees down. So he was in a wheelchair. And this guy had violent flashbacks. So even, and he was always getting drunk and always getting high, but you can't condemn him because of what he had to see and what he had to do. He mentally broke. It broke him as a human. So when you see true PTSD, and then you look at David, you know, David did not have this PTSD. Was David affected? Absolutely, he was affected. Anybody would be. And that's not the question. But did he snap due to time and war? Oh, hell no. It just doesn't fit. But and then we also read in his journal where he talks about, yeah, he was frustrated with being a dad. And like you said, you would be an absolute liar if you read that journal and then tried to say he was this perfect father. He wasn't. Right. Sometimes he was a downright asshole. End of story. But does that, being an asshole does not make you a killer. And so and as you're reading his journal, and again, we have to remember, he wrote this never knowing it would be public one day. These were his private thoughts, his private struggles with being a dad. And again, not uncommon with guys that I saw in the military. We would deal with soldiers that would have these same types of thoughts all the time. So it's not, and again, maybe it seems odd and abnormal to people who don't deal with guys that struggle with this. But you have to understand, these are soldiers that 9 times out of 10 marry because they're going to be sent off to war. Right. And that's it. They meet somebody and it's all fresh, it's all new. That's when everything is really at its peak and at its height. And then you leave. And then when you come back and there's a child, it messes with them.
That would be huge. That would be, and that was huge to David too, right? Like you can see that too.
It really was, because he wanted to spend time getting to know his wife, but he couldn't because he had to be a dad. And now people are judging him on that. Don't judge him unless you've been in his shoes. Don't judge him. And I really wish many people would not. And then as you're reading through the journal, and this is kind of what, leads me to realize how much he loved his daughter. Yes, he was angry and frustrated and resentful, or maybe resentful is not the right word, but wish he'd done things differently at the beginning. But then he reaches a point in his journal where he's like, he writes about a time when he got upset at something that she did. Nuts. There were nuts on a counter on the table.
Right.
And he was so angry at her. And then you're watching him read, as you're reading what he's writing, he's going through this whole post. And then at the end, he's like, what kind of dad am I to get upset over nuts on a table? Was it really worth it? Hurting her psyche for that moment in time, that brief moment in time, because she left nuts on the table and she was hungry. That is when you have someone who realizes and acknowledges, and it's like this light bulb goes off going, oh, holy crap, what did I just do to my kid? I can't do that anymore. Mm-hmm. She's so much more valuable. And he says this, as a human, she's valuable. I should be encouraging her and loving her and uplifting her. But instead, I focused on that. Who am I to do that?
Right. And that's what I was saying. These journals, you have to be careful because they're a moment in time. They're you can't judge it on that one. Like you were saying, they're like snapshots is the way I look at them. And that's the way I see my journal. It's a snapshot of that moment, what I was feeling or that day, but it's definitely not defining how I am every day. It's not defining. And I've said this in other interviews too, that I've done with other people on this case. The journal, he does say a lot of mean things, but I also see, as the journal goes on, that he's also be growing as a father. And I do see that. I see him coming to terms with being a father, and I see him embracing it, and I see him trying to do things different. Mm-hmm. What I don't see in the journal, from what I've read, and I don't see a man going into madness or something like that. I don't. And that's another thing that makes me believe that he might not have done this, is that when you have the police department looking for a year to try to find any motive, and they looked, and believe me, if they could have found motive, they would have. If they could have tagged motive on this because it helps their story, they would have threw it at us. They would have said, this is the motive, we got him.
Mhm.
and they found nothing in a year of digging. They went through everything of that man's life. You guarantee it. They went through everything of that man's life to try to find anything, and they can't. That I don't know. So you either
Yeah.
got to believe that there was no, he snapped out of the blue with no lead up, or he didn't do it. I mean, you can't have it every way.
Right.
So
And
that's why
and
I'm always leaning that he didn't do it now.
right. And I want to go back to what you had just said about his journal, because and so many people say he was spiraling down.
I don't see it.
That's not true. His journal shows him spiraling up. He
Right.
starts out really depressed and going, oh my gosh, why did I have a bratty kid? I'm not ready for this. I can't spend time with my wife. This kid is sucking our energy. And I'm sorry, as a new parent, I don't know. Most parents go through this at one point or another, and you would be lying if you said you didn't.
Right.
But toward the end, and then somewhere in the middle, where he one time Rania did something, or he got upset with her, and then he's writing this, and then he's like, wait a second, I just realized why I got upset at her. My dad did this. I am being my father right now. And again, something every parent, we all do it at one point or another. We're like going, oh my God, I just channeled my mother, right? Or my father. And this was his aha moment. And then he's like, I don't want to be that. So whatever experience he was remembering he went through with his dad, and I am not condemning his dad, because every parent makes mistakes, and every parent is a great parent at times, and every parent is a really horrible parent at times. So he must have thought of this moment in time where his dad was not being a good dad. And he then realized he was doing what his father did to him. And he says, I am not doing this. I can't do this to her. She deserves better. And then from that point forward, throughout the rest of the journal to the very, very end, at one of his very last entries, he's like, he did it. He's like, we connected. We're happy. She talks to me now. That's not a spiraling down.
And that's what I agree. That's what I saw when I was reading the journal too. I was expecting, for what I was hearing from other people, to see this big spiral, like, him having breakdowns and him like going, like, I guess it's what you think in your head of what a spiraling, like somebody going mad is. I guess you can probably blame Hollywood for that, like this image of somebody going crazy. But I don't see it in there, and I'm open to being wrong, but I don't read it in there. I see what you see. And to be honest, I see somebody that's adjusting to being a father and coming back. He just came back from a war. Let's not forget. Like, I mean, he was in a traumatic thing with the war. Then he got sent back, and then came home. He's got a daughter. Like, that's a lot for a young man to place on his shoulders. Like, I mean, everybody would be struggling at times. And I've never said he was perfect. I've never heard you say he was perfect. And I've never heard anyone say he's a perfect person by any stretch. He was struggling with stuff.
Yeah, and and if I were to be honest, if I were to meet him in real life, I probably would not have liked him as a person. And because he's a very strong type A personality, I am a very strong type A personality, and those generally clash.
Oh, for sure.
And so, yeah. So I know with my personality, and I see who he is. I'm watching his interviews, I'm reading his journal, I'm watching what he's doing, and he's very driven and straight to the point and honest. I could see where we would be like button heads left and right, but that would not mean that he wouldn't be a good person. It just means our personalities would not match. So, people who go around going, oh yeah, you're just doing that because no, that's not it at all. I'm trying to look at this from a realistic point of view, from an unbiased point of view, because if I wouldn't like him as a person and I'm still defending him, for me, that kind of tells me something about what I'm seeing in the case. And yeah, is there anything else other than where he talks about where you see he could have done it?
No, that's about it. Like, I really am trying to stay in it's hard to stay in the middle, because eventually the evidence is dragging you to, and I kept going over and over the evidence, and I'm like, I'm missing something. Like, I don't know, maybe it's maybe because he's an American soldier or something, and I don't know, maybe something makes me want to think that he couldn't do it, and I don't want that to cloud it. That's another thing. Like, I'm like, I have to look at it in the middle, and that's what I'm doing. But
You can't. You're going to have to make up your mind.
Yeah, like you can only look at so much evidence before it just, and it's like I was saying in another interview, it's either horrible police work at best or it's a cover up at the worst, because there's so much they didn't do. They didn't test any like certain things, and they didn't explain things like that big blood stain on the lazy boy chair. Why was that? That is huge to me. Why would you not test that? Why would you not test the
Yeah,
dog
you had
feces?
exactly. They had that big spot on the
Yes,
footrest on the chair, but yet there's no blood on the rug underneath it.
right.
Explain that to me, please.
The blood on the
Um,
magazine that
mhm.
I, and then when I started talking, the more, that's why I kept leaning more now to that he didn't do it, is because as I talked to the vet, and then I talked to my friend who's a gunsmith, and he's telling me that what this ammunition can do,
Oh yeah.
and stuff like that. And even my friend, I was just telling him about the case, and he's like, that sounds really weird to me that he thinks there should be blood everywhere. That's
Oh,
what
there
he's
should
saying, like
be.
the
There should be.
walls, the ceiling.
Mhm.
And he said, if you have that many gunshots in somebody's head with hollow point bullets, the whole room's going to be covered. The walls, the ceiling.
There are four head wounds
Right.
that they logged. There's a fifth bullet with Camille's blood on. So Camille has 3 with her, but they do log 2 wounds to her head, one
Yep.
to Rania, one to 4. So we have 4 head wounds. Where's the blood? And where's the brain matter? It's not to be found. And again, I shoot hollow points, but only at the range. I don't go around shooting people. I don't, but I mean, at the range, I shoot hollow points.
Right.
So at targets, I see what those suckers can do, how they expand, what happens when they hit something hard. And I'm sorry, but the skull is hard. So
Yep.
when it hits, it's going to mushroom, then go through, bounce around, collect a lot of stuff, and then exit. So it's going to make obviously a bigger wound. But, when you're looking at how he's laying, where it exits the left parietal. So
Mhm.
it exits up here, and that section of his head is facing the window, and the bullet entrance is this way up in the ceiling.
Mhm.
So we have exit here, and it's up here, and there's nothing on that. There's no blood on that bullet at all, and they state no blood. I know there's someone out there that keeps trying to say that there's blood on that. No, the BCA reports clearly state blood was not found, was not indicated. And so they took a swab and then found DNA at that point.
Right.
DNA is not just blood. It can be from many, many sources. But so to have me, it is absolutely physically impossible. It defies all laws of physics to have it enter wherever it entered. We don't know where the entrance was, but exit here, turn around, go back up this way, and then not contain any tissue whatsoever, no blood
Right.
whatsoever. It's absolutely, so to me, so they don't have the bullet that killed him. And it wasn't in the dog feces. So
Right.
where is it?
You think they would even test the dog? I don't understand why they didn't test the dog feces, even just to argue with, like, anyone that said, well, the dog couldn't have ate all of that. They can say, we tested it. There's bone fragments in it. That ends that argument. Done. It's put away.
Now
Why-
they can never do that.
They can never
collected.
do that. Right. And that was really what started me leaning a lot to the fact that I don't think he did it, because when I talked to my friend, and he was actually showing me the bullets. Like, I never seen a bullet like that before. I'm not, like, I have a 22. I don't have anything
Oh, you
bigger
have
than
little
that.
tiny.
22. They're little. Anybody that knows that's listening or watching that knows a 22. They're little teeny
Yes.
bullets. And then he handed me that one for that was used in this case, and I was like, oh my God, that's scary to me.
Yeah,
And that-
and it
and-
was a full metal jacket. So it's a full metal jacket hollow point. So it's a good solid bullet. That sucker
Yep.
would have made a mess. And,
Yep,
and not
and-
to be rude, and I'm not trying to be crass, but it's honest. It would have made a mess.
Yeah, and that's what my friend said. He said the same thing, and like I said earlier, that's what he jumped to right away was there must have been blood all over the ceiling, right? And I was like, no, there was none. And he's like, that stopped him right there. He's like, that doesn't make sense. He's like,
Mhm.
there, like, he goes, and then he was showing me videos on YouTube. This is where I think I sent you the video, but he was sending me videos of what these bullets do when you shoot them in a ballistic gel and when you shoot them into all these different things. He's like, and that's what he was so hard on making that point to me. He's like, you have to see what these bullets can do. And if there was that many that went through that, like that many bullets went through somebody's head, it would be everywhere. And then I went and looked at crime scene photos. I want to see what gunshot photos like from old crime scenes would look like. And there's a lot of blood when you see from one shot
Yep.
from somebody that's shot in the head. I remember seeing one photo and the whole wall behind the guy was covered, like paint
And
it.
it depends on what they're using. Like a shotgun
Right.
obviously leave more than a
Oh,
handgun.
for
but
sure.
still-
Right.
But still, like you said, every photo you see, there's brain matter and there's
Yes.
blood and there's usually chunks of little pieces of skull
Yep.
everywhere.
Yep.
And there's none of that in this scene.
Right. And I know they're going to say, well, the dog ate it. I mean, but and I know they always blame paleo. I mean, the dog
I
does
know.
everything, but
Poor dog.
I know, but I mean, then we get to the selective, okay, but he didn't lick over here. He ate this, and that doesn't explain the walls or the ceiling. I mean, I'll give it to him on the floor.
Yeah.
but-
Okay. Let's say that the dog decided to pick and choose and decide to lick in areas, and for some reason the Mino Black doesn't pick up on any of this.
Yep.
Impossible, but let's just say for the sake
We'll
of
go with
argument, this is how it goes. But yet, if it's exiting the left side, there should be spatter all over that window or that curtain. Well, the window was open. So
Mhm.
it should be all over that window, because he was only a couple of feet away from it, 3
Right.
feet maybe. There's nothing.
Right.
That
And the
window
dog,
is
yeah,
clean,
no
and
blood
the dog
there,
could
none
reach
on the-
there.
Can't reach it. That's what yeah. So I mean, I'll follow. A lot of it, I'll go with you on it. But then there's some that you just can't explain. And the other thing that's always really bothered me in that crime scene, and I've said it before, is the knife. Why was that knife even there?
Yep.
And a lot of people they kind of don't talk about it. I'm like, why was there an open knife there? Why is it even there? If this was what people say, and he went and there was a murder suicide,
He would not
Why-
have touched that knife.
yeah, why the knife? It doesn't mean, to
Yeah.
me, these are things that make,
And that
don't,
again, yes, that again screams staging, because it was open, it was blade open, blade up, blade pointing down.
Right.
And by his leg. And it has all three of their DNA on it. And then the skull piece we see on the floor, and I will keep talking about this, that skull piece, you see straight lines on that
Mhm.
skin. A dog cannot rip a straight line.
right.
Does not happen. Human
Right.
cannot rip a straight line. Does not happen. So who
Right.
took off David's skull?
Yep. And why is the knife even there? That's what
Yes.
I've said that so many times. I'm like, explain why the knife was even there.
Yeah.
If it was a murder suicide. And to me, and no matter who did it, I always say it was definitely staged. I mean,
Nobody brings a knife to a gunfight. How
right.
stupid is that?
Right. Especially if it's a murder suicide. It's like, why? I just want to know why the knife is there. And I don't buy that the bullet in the floor was him shooting at the dog. I won't buy it. I don't buy it. It's possible. I wasn't there, but I don't see it.
No. But again,
And
these guys are taught to lead their target.
right.
And you're not going to just shoot randomly at a dog, and only once. I'll shoot randomly. Oops, I missed him. Okay, I'll let it go.
Right.
Nope. You will lead that shoot where you know they're going to be coming. And when by the time you shoot, they then basically run into that projectile and then you get them. So yeah.
That's why I'm leaning more and more always, and I've said that to you before, I'm leaning more and more over to, I don't think he did it. And how did I get to this, right or wrong? I wasn't there. I don't know, but I'm going by what I'm reading and what I'm seeing, and it just doesn't add up. And there's a lot of things that aren't explained. And
Yeah. And I agree
make-
with you, because when I first came across this case, I said it a million times. I honestly came in believing he was guilty. I had no
Right, I've heard
reason
you
to
say-
believe he wasn't guilty. And
I
then
heard
as
you
soon
say
as-
that.
Yeah, and as soon as I start reading those autopsy reports, I'm like, oh, things aren't adding up here. This guy
Right.
didn't do it.
Right. And that's how I was. I was like, and that's what everybody kept telling me. You have to read the reports yourself. I'm like, I will do that. I'll take that challenge. I'm going to read everything I can. And like I said at the beginning, it's a lot. I didn't realize how much there was to read. And then all the photos and then the scripts and everything. And I can only go by what I'm reading and seeing. And I don't see how he did it. I just don't.
Yeah,
I don't. I'm sorry.
I agree with you 100%. But okay, so we've actually been on here like an hour and a half.
We're rocking.
We are, but so we should probably cut this before they
Not-
decide to cut it for me. So
Okay.
before we go, let everybody know your channel, because I will put a link down below in the description box. But
Perfect. Yeah,
Let
you
us
can
know.
find me right here on YouTube at CryptRix. I've been thinking, and we do lots of cool interviews. I interview about not just the Crowley case. I cover cryptocurrency. I've interviewed people about flat Earth. Which so have you, Catherine. Great interviews, by the way. Amazing. I love talking to him. David is amazing.
oh, he
and,
is.
And I cover, like I said, cryptocurrency, flat Earth,
Bigfoot. Hey, you have to
Bigfoot.
do more on the Bigfoot. Seriously.
I do.
You got-
I do. I actually do. I have a couple more interviews lined up for people that even live in my area. So I got more Bigfoot coming. And then I just started my own radio show, which will be on every Monday night. You have to go to, I have to get this right because I always
Send
want
me
to
the
say
link and I'll put that in the description box.
I will. I definitely will. So Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And you go there and I'm on every Monday night, 6 p.m. Studio A. And definitely check me out there. And I have a bunch of guests that I've already done 2 shows and I got more guests lined up. So it'll be great to see you there.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you, Rick, for coming on. And we will revisit this, especially after you meet up with the vet again and get more of our questions answered. The poor guy.
I will.
It's like we'll just inundate him.
I know, like I'm going to be putting photos at him now and everything. So no, I will though. I'm going to write down the questions that we went through because I'm as curious as you are. So I'm going to bring him some of the crime scene photos and that and kind of see what he thinks. I think it's a great way I think it's a good thing to do and I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I agree. So
Perfect.
Thank you. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
You too. Take care, Catherine.
Okay. Bye, Rick.
Bye.
All of them are missing with no explained reason. For all intensive purposes, they've just vanished.
Hi, I'm Kyle Kraska. It's the FBI case that has all the elements of a Hollywood thriller. A missing millionaires, a huge reward, and clues the cops just can't figure out.
We feel almost certain that the women were the victims of a violent crime. The car was very badly and totally burned.
It's been positively identified by dental records. The second victim that was in the trunk of the burned vehicle, DNA testing has been done.
People responsible for the Yosemite murders are behind bars.
The police interest in the ex-cons heated up. They were getting locked up on parole violation.
But at that point, they were focused really in the wrong direction.
Our final guest of the program is a former police officer, Steve Sanzeri.
Everyone on all the message boards have all been talking about this case and debating it and saying, hey, man, there's something more here than meets the eye.
But I wanted to visit with an expert on this, and Steve obviously is. Steve, thanks for joining us. How are you?
Good morning, Scott. Thank you for having me on.
Mr. Sanzeri, are you there?
I am. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Like you don't know, we've just been talking all day.
The massive manhunt, all kinds of resources, multiple of SWAT teams and sheriff's offices and highway patrol and helicopters and infrared technology to find them because of a screw-up.
I mean, I just hoping I wouldn't get shot at the front door. And the curtains moved, the sun's breaking, all of a sudden, Candler came out like a wildcat right at me for my weapon.
This is a fascinating story.
You're so scared and all alone. Hangman is coming down from the gallows, and I don't have very long. Yeah! His dig is up, the news is out, they finally found me. The renegade who had it made, retreat from the boundary.
Hi, YouTube. It's Catherine Michelle. Today we're kind of going to go over and do like one of those clarification videos. There seems to be some questions that some people are getting or comments that some people are seeing from others. I have a lot of these people blocked, so other people come to me and they're like, well, what does this mean? Who seem to misunderstand the whole concept of the fake documents. So to help those who are asking the questions, so you guys can really understand what's happening here, I'm going to put on the screen the email from the attorney, the affidavit from Dr. Detective Klokanos, and then the actual, then the fake document, and then the real ECU report. The misunderstanding is coming in where some people are confusing the fact that there is a real ECU report, and then someone took a header from that report and then blocked out the bottom and typed in a bunch of stuff. I mean, when you compare the two documents, you'll see how they're not the same. It's not the same wording. It's not even the same formula setup that all of their other documents follow, and you'll be able to see that. And what I mean by the actual real document, it has right justification, and the fake document does not. You never see in any of the real police reports where Detective Klokanos calls himself Shane. He's always very professional. This one is addressed to Tommy and signed Shane. And we know that by reading the police reports, these police officers don't behave in that way. It's never been consistent with any of the police reports or even emails. We have copies of their emails and communication they had back and forth with the BCA, and they never spoke to each other like this. So right away, it's evident that this is a fake document. And someone brought it to the attention of the Apple Valley Police Department. I'm not quite sure how. We only know that the city attorney states that someone brought it to their attention. Then they contacted the city attorney, because this is actually a huge felony. This is not an okay crime. Anybody who goes around faking, falsifying, creating police documents under the name and guise of a police officer, we have several felonies going on here. So I don't know what possessed the person who did this to do this. I'm not going to speculate who. Do I have a feeling who I think could be involved? Yeah, but I think so do you guys. But that's not my place to say, because I don't have anything solid and to say that, yes, for sure, I know they did this. But the point of this is to put to rest the misquoting of Sophia. Sophia states in the video with Greg, I think I was part of that too. Sorry, days are jumbling together. But she says, when the attorney and when Detective Klokanos states that he did not write this, he doesn't recognize this document, he couldn't find this document in any of the police records, they're not referring to the actual ECU report. And these are not one and the same, okay? Not at all. You have this fake one-page document supposedly from Detective Klokanos stating how they feel the bodies, who died when, and all this other stuff that's just pure bogus. It's all a lie. Some of it was taken out of an original document, another felony, and put into this fake document to make it kind of sort of sound legitimate. And that fake is a fake, but the actual document is the real document and is part of the police records that have been obtained. So they're not one and the same. They don't belong to the same. They are not even correlated or belong together at all. Someone had taken the header from the actual real ECU report, and like I said, then created this false document pretending to be in writing as if they are Detective Klokanos, addressing it to Tommy Booth. but yet the header, they didn't fix the header very well, because in the actual real header, which is exactly the same as the original document, but on the fake document they kept the header, but that header is addressed to both Tommy and I can't remember if it's Brian Bone. I can't remember, but there's two different police officers. But in this section where it's typed out, it's only addressed to one. So again, lots of mistakes on this part. And I really, really hope that the city attorney is taking this seriously. They say they're investigating this, and they should, because like I said, there are several felonies involved here that can range anywhere up to 3, 5, 10 years in prison plus fines, financial fines. And that's, you can look it up online, Google forging documents, and Google, I think that's what I found it under. But you look up under the Minnesota state statutes for falsifying and forgery. Look up document forgery, especially where and how it relates to legal documents from the police department, courts, or anything like that. It's serious. It's really serious. So whoever created this document, they're in a world of hurt. As soon as, as long as the Apple Valley City Attorney, continues this, and the Apple Valley Police Department does continue to investigate this, it won't be hard for them to pinpoint where it came from. That's the reality. We know where we got it from. It was in a data file dump from Tony Floyd, and he received it from the Facts versus Fiction Crowley thing. That's the group of people who constantly harass myself and Greg and then Dan Hennon when Dan was on YouTube. I mean, we're talking constant bombardment and harassment. And this is where this fake document came from, was from their group. That is truth. It's backed up by email exchange, text exchange. Now, they're still trying to say that they received this from the Apple Valley Police Department, and Apple Valley Police Department saying this is fake. We don't even know what this is. And when to go so far as to have Detective Clocono sign an affidavit, a legal document stating he did not write that not for public release ECU report, to me, that tells me they're taking this very seriously, because again, these are major felonies. This isn't something minor. But anyway, so Sophia was correct in saying that when and what she meant, and again, another thing that is constantly misconstrued by those who shall not be named. And again, these are people who are asking me, wanting clarification. But since there has been so many questions, I just decided to do a video so I can answer it all together. What she said was, when she's saying that she didn't, something about she didn't know. I'm not going to misquote this. I will be right back, and let me find that quote, what she said, okay? Be patient. Hold on. Okay. I had to go back and listen to the podcast that we did. Okay, so what Sophia's saying is that first, when she first saw this email pop up, she was out driving around and she was busy and she didn't quite understand what was going on. She's like, wait, what? What are they saying? So she was, so she went from trying to read the email from the attorney to looking at the affidavit. And she's like, okay, I don't know what's going on. I'm just going to wait till later. And then when she got home and actually had time to sit down and read it and take in what was going on without other distractions around her, is when she realized that this was referring to the fake memo, what she calls a memo, but we know it's a fake document, that Tony Floyd had uploaded and, made public. And so then she started to put it together and she's like, oh. And I remember when, we were discussing this back and forth, and before we even knew Greg had even received the same email. We did not know that at this time Greg had received the same email. So Sophia and I were talking back and forth, and about the email, and she's like, oh my goodness, are they being serious? And I go, well, yeah. You don't get a letter from a city attorney if they're not serious, let alone an affidavit. And she's like, oh no, like, who would do this? And this was her first thought. Her first thought wasn't jumping to conclusions and starting to blame somebody. She's like, oh no, somebody's faking documents in the case. Has this happened before? So this type of conversation we're having, on and on and on. Again, just between the two of us. This isn't anything we're putting out. We're, just kind of brainstorming this whole email and realizing the fact that, there's been this leaked document. Now, Sophia and I, this is we kept it to ourselves. When it first came out, we did in passing talk about this. And then she's like, oh my goodness, look, this sounds exactly like what some other people were saying. And is this where they got it from? Did they get it from Detective Klokanos? Because that's kind of where she thought at first. It was a brief flash in her head that, maybe Detective Klokanos had given them this information and had provided us with false information, or not all the information. And then we're like, well, that really doesn't sound like him. So we're just like, you know what, let's just leave this and let's just let it ride. That's why I never addressed it. I never brought it up, because it didn't look right. But it's one of those situations where I didn't have enough information. I saw something that was questionable, but was it real or was it not real? I had my suspicions, but nothing to back up either way. So we just stepped back and said, let it go. And it wasn't until the city attorney then sent that email to both Sophia and to Greg, and letting them both know that that document was not correct. And that's only that one-paged memo that says not for public release. That is the only fake document. The actual ECU report is a valid and right report. So when Detective Klokanos is stating in his affidavit that, he searched he's looking through the files, it's not there. He's looking through his notes, it's not there. He doesn't recognize that. Again, he's referring to the one page, not his actual report. And so hopefully that will help explain this a little bit better. And again, I'll put this up at the end of this video. I will put up the slide showing the email, and then Detective Klokanos's affidavit, and then the fake document, and then the actual real report. All of those will be, in there, and you will be able to see the difference. Again, this fake document was not part of a real document and then one page taken out of 5 or 6. There are 5 pages to the actual real report, and you will see them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you have this fake one. And then nowhere is that part of this other real document. So again, I hope that clears it up. It's not the same, never was the same. Somebody created that document, and again, that is a felony. There's forgery going on here. There's impersonating an officer going on here. Yeah. Whoever did this, oh, I don't know. It's if they follow through on this, if the Apple Valley City attorney follows through on this, and they find you, and they will. I feel sorry for you. If nothing else, I really hope that this puts to rest the need to constantly create fake documents, fake email texts, fake everything. There's so many things that are put out by some people that are created on their own. They make stuff up. They have these elaborate, well, not so elaborate, but elaborate in the sense of where they go on and they carry it on and on and on. And you're like, wow, which is why we don't address this. Usually it's not worth our time, because we know it's a lie. They know it's a lie, but they present it as its truth. And those people who truly have been following the case, which a lot of you have, and you guys know, you guys are smart enough, and you guys see that, where it's fake and where the lies are coming in. And I really appreciate all of your support, both in comments and in private emails. I cannot express enough thank you to you guys for standing by, not only us, because we're trying to do this the best we can. Oftentimes things can not be given a definite answer, but we kind of have to give it a best guess. Well, according to all what's being done here, said here, here's kind of where we think it's going. But, that's a far cry from going, creating an entire document and saying it's from a police officer and then presenting it to the public in any way, shape, or form. If you hand over that document to anybody, you've now made it public. And that person, then when they then release it, and what happened in this instance with Tony Floyd, guess what? That falls back on you. You created that document. You handed it over to Tony. Tony made it public because they knew it was fake. And now comes the legal repercussions. So please, if anything else, I really pray you guys have learned your lesson. Stop this. Just stop. It's okay. You don't have to agree with our stance. You truly don't. And there's no law that says you have to. And guess what? The world would be really boring if everybody agreed on everything. So let's keep this civil. Let's keep it polite, and no more dirty tricks. Sophia wasn't lying. She wasn't confused. It's not like, oh, she knew this, she didn't know that. No, when she first received the email, it was confusing. She was busy. There was things going on. She set it aside until she could get home and open it up. So when she's relating how she came across this document and how she processed it, there's no two sides to this. She's walking you through the steps it took her to realize that this was a real email from the actual city attorney, and holy Toledo cakes, someone faked a document that was not part of the original document. That is all she was saying. And again, for the umpteenth time, just to drill this home for those who I know will be listening, this is not part of the actual real police document by Detective Klokonos. Somebody took snippets from his actual document, inserted it into this fake, not for public release document, but that doesn't mean Detective Klokonos wrote it. He did not. He does not recognize that page. He knows his report. He does not know that report. So I hope that, hopefully that kind of clears it up and we can move forward from here. And if you guys have any more questions, you can email me, or you can find us on the Justice for David Crowley Family Facebook page, or you can leave a comment down below. Hope you guys are having a great day and continue the fight. We'll keep fighting for justice. And thank you for joining us in that fight.
George Orwell once said that in a time of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. Oh, how those words were only whispered when he first said it, but it's a trumpet blaring through a megaphone today. So are you ready to take a journey down a labyrinth of twists, turns, and dead ends as we seek out Wonderland? Join me every weekend for investigative live streams at twitch.tv/Strange Investigations. Interested in more organized and detailed content about the hard truths of the world? Then check out my content on YouTube by searching out William Rail or Strange Investigations, on Rumble, BitChute, and Odyssey by searching Strange Investigations. Lastly, if quick and easily digestible content is more your speed, you just can't get enough of my content, check out my content on TikTok at Strange Investigations 1.